Live recording has started. That means we got to start with this.
You got a team, here's a word of the wise. You want to dominate your league? Go to football, guys.
Football, I'm living in a fantasy. Football, got everybody mad at me. Football, cause every game I had to win. Football, I gotta be a champion. Football, I'm living in a fantasy.
The week of the NFL draft is here, and that's why Cecil, Lammey, and Sigmund are here to talk about the draft picks that will get you fired, including Will Levis, Bloom. And we got plenty to get to with C.J. Stroud. We'll do that a little bit later. I know they're kind of interconnected, but why do I get the feeling that whatever team picks Will Levis is eventually going to get their front office fired?
Well, Cecil, we could definitely do an on-the-couch episode with you, and I could try to get into your mind and figure out why you feel the way you do. I think that there's a lot of interesting ground we can mine for any one of us on that, but I think it's because Levis last year did not look like a first-round quarterback. He looked like a quarterback, indeed, that would get anybody who would stand on the table for him fired. And Dane Brugler on the couch last week, the best, Dane, as far as draft analysts, draft experts go. And he said, and he admitted that, it's a fine line between excuses and reasons. Well, are the reasons that Will Levis dropped off significantly last year, that Liam Cohen left for the Rams and he was learning Rich Scangarello's offense? Because you can speak to Scangarello. Is it because he was hurt, multiple injuries? Does that cause bad habits? Do those bad habits get ingrained where you have to undo them? Even Dane, who I won't call him a defender, I won't put words in his mouth, but his comparison is Carson Wentz. Now you can say, hey, the ride up is nice with Carson Wentz, the ride down a little bumpy. And I don't know that Carson Wentz got Doug Peterson fired, really, but so it's hard to unpack all this stuff. But see, so where this is really going is we still have no idea when and where Will Levis is going to go. So maybe, for instance, Sam Farmer's been covering the NFL since 1994.
The best of the best.
Oh,
the best.
Man. Yeah.
Great Sam Farmer. Man. Great man.
It makes me think about Rick Gosselin. I miss Rick Gosselin's mock coming out on the draft day and everyone saying, well, this is what's actually going to happen. He had Levis falling to 19 to Tampa. Now, if you take Will Levis at 19, maybe that doesn't get you fired. You take him at 2, you take him at 4, you trade up to take him at 3. That could get you fired. But I think that the biggest variable here that we don't know is what kind of system is he going to be put in? What parts of his game are they going to accentuate? What parts of his game are they going to try to downplay? Do they have an accurate picture of who Will Levis is? I do think with Sam Farmer saying, hey, Levis is going to fall to 19, which means the Texans pass on him at 12 after not taking a quarterback. He has him taking Will Anderson at number 2. Then maybe all the betting markets. And that's the other weird lens we have. See, we never talked about betting markets when we were looking at Rick Gosselin's mock like 20 years ago and saying, Dante Whitner to the Bills? Well, if Rick Gosselin says it must be something, the betting markets had a spike for Will Levis going at 2 earlier this week, but I am going to trust the people that have been covering the NFL since I was a kid.
Yeah, I would say this. The Wentz comparison is incredibly accurate. I have him around to Blake Bortles, Daniel Jones type of level. And people may be saying, well, wait a second, Daniel Jones played good football. Yeah, finally, with Brian Daboll.
Well, because there's a good ecosystem. Yeah.
It's fit. Everything is fit. And when you bring up Rich Scangarello, do you know what I think of? When Rich Scangarello went 4-1 with Drew Lock as the starter because he was telling him what to do in his ear. Mm-hmm. So if Levis has any sort of struggles with the guy that made Drew Lock look good, and remember, Drew Lock looked good, hey, that's a concern for me. That's a problem. And I don't have Will Levis with a first-round grade. I know that JT O'Sullivan, who is magnifique, like give him the Keanu kiss. That's how much I love JT O'Sullivan. Quarterback School on YouTube, everybody. Welcome to the quarterback school, right? That's good to just get going. JT O'Sullivan has a 3rd or 4th round grade on him because somebody on Twitter asked him well, where would you feel comfortable? And he's like, round 3 or 4. So 19 is interesting. There's a conversation about don't take quarterbacks in the 20s. Take a quarterback at 31 take a quarterback in the top 10. Don't take him in the teens or 20s. That's a different conversation. But for me, like, I just don't see it, and I don't trust it, because in this quarterback desperate league, someone's going to rush him out there. If you
Right.
give Will Levis time, and Daniel Jones kind of stumbled into that extra time, and then to his credit, Daniel Jones did play better, but you're still playing with that weight that is Daniel Jones play, even in Brian Dable's system. So even with the fit and Daniel Jones looked better, there were still some Daniel Jones things going on, and I feel Will Levis will be that same thing.
Yeah, and see, so there's so many different quarterbacks we could talk about right now, like Jordan Love. There was a trade that happened this week. Well, I mean, the trade really probably happened effectively months ago, but it actually was consummated. Jordan Love. Would Jordan Love have been the same quarterback if he was drafted somewhere where he had to start right away as he's going to be with all those years in the incubator? We'll see. And we talk about system and how much the system can help a quarterback. Trey Lance's name comes in here. Is it important that he hasn't played a lot of meaningful football for a while? But yeah, I think that when we look at where these quarterbacks land, that's really just the opening chapter. That's not a conclusion really to a story. That's an opening to a story. And what these quarterbacks are going to be asked to do and when they're asked to do it. See, this is why Hendon Hooker, if he goes in the first round, if he goes Thursday night, a lot of people are going to pan that pick. However, we've talked about this, quarterbacks falling to the second round. And I think you bring up a really interesting point when you say quarterbacks that fall. It's kind of like our dead zone in our fantasy drafts with running backs, right?
Right.
If nobody in your draft likes a running back enough to take him in the third round, then maybe that running back should fall all the way to the seventh round. And that's why we don't like those dead zone running backs. And likewise, if a quarterback has it, I like Matt Waldman's unpacking of that integrated technique. If a quarterback has it, then some organization is going to talk themselves into taking him in the top half of the first round, right? And if that quarterback makes it through the top half of the first round and no one has done that, then you're probably better off letting that quarterback fall to the second round, because then there's no expectations. When there's no first round expectations, a quarterback's development can happen more naturally, because, hey, when we unpack all of our lives, how much of our emotional problems are based on expectations versus reality? Maybe we can adjust those expectations. So if Hendon Hooker, who's coming out with an ACL tear, he gets a year right away. Even if he's a first round pick, he gets a year right away. And that might be all the difference.
I wonder if they could double dip with the NFI in his 5th-year option. Can they do that? So he'd be actually under contract for 6 years. I don't think they can. But if Hendon Hooker's a second-round pick, you still have a 5th year, because all you do is NFI him this year.
Yeah.
No one can touch him. He doesn't get a year of service, unfortunately for him, but you get an extra year of that quarterback. So
get that to whichever team takes him.
Yeah. So the Will Levis thing, we'll see what's going on there. And then yet again, here we are, 8 minutes and 17 seconds into the show, Bloom. And we are talking about yet another quarterback that has to go through some slanderous reports. And I do believe they are slanderous for C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud can play. Okay. I don't think he's the superstar like Caleb Williams, next year's class, Drake May, all those sorts of things. But like for this class, he was almost my number one quarterback. And I love Bryce Young. Like I love him. I think he's a highly developed passer. But you know who else is? C.J. Stroud. And right before this show, I was watching a Matt Waldman clip. Thanks to our friend Chris Harp for clipping that up, with Waldman talking about C.J. Stroud. And it's just hitting all the marks that you need to know about the best part of his game. But here we go again, Bloom. And we can get into the social commentary on if you'd like. We do that on this show. You guys know that. But yet again, another quarterback, about a week before the draft. Notice that, right? About a week. And then all of a sudden, some agent, and that's who it is, releasing this quote unquote information, cognitive skills. If you don't know CJ Stroud can play at a high level, you're a moron. If you're helmet scouting about like, what is this Ohio State quarterback Joe Burrow? Are we going to talk about Joey B? I know LSU. And then also, Bloom, there were zero, other than maybe Billy Joe Tolliver, there were zero Texas Tech quarterbacks that were worth a shut your mouth. Sorry, I just got it just demonetized because YouTube and the overlords. There was no Texas Tech quarterback worth anything until some guy named Pat Mahomes. So don't give me this, what Ohio State quarterback has ever done. Like, there's moronic way. And I go back to this often, maybe because I'm old, Bloom. Like, just don't be dumb. Don't be dumb in life, in football. Just don't be dumb. And I think it's dumb to have this stuff come out on CJ Stroud. That doesn't mean anything. It reminds me of the Justin Fields thing. And again, Bloom, there is social commentary here. Here we go again. Like, I hate this part of the pre-draft process. About a week to go, and then here's a big reveal. Oh, CJ Stroud, cognitive test, whatever. It's all bump kiss, a word we need to use more often.
Yeah, a good Yiddish word. So many different angles, Cease. I feel like you get the scalpel out. One of the things that comes to mind right away is now the S2 test is the gospel. Okay. I mean, it's an advancement from the Wonderlic. I'll tell you that. And yes, just as breathlessly, people were talking about Wonderlic test scores. Now we have more analytics, more numbers to say, well, anybody if you perform well on the S2 test, it doesn't mean you're going to be a success, but if you bomb it, then that means you're going to be a failure or highly likely. Now, I even wonder, is S2 or the company that creates the S2 test, or are they behind all this? Because all of a sudden we're all talking about the S2 test, right? This is the new Rosetta Stone, the new skeleton key. Because what do we always talk about for years? Quarterback's the hardest position to scout. It's the hardest position to scout because there's the emotional, psychological, spiritual element of it that you can only do like Matt Waldman does with the wonderful RSP, solve for X. So you're really not just looking at the mechanics or the physical part of the game. You're trying to reverse engineer. What did he see? What made him do that? And I think even an S2 test is going to be skewed because, well, geez, really sees you have to take the S2 test after they just told you your mom found out she has cancer and has 6 months to live. And then at the end of the test, they tell you, actually, that's not true because you introduce emotional distress, right?
Right.
Or you're not simulating the NFL. I mean, how can you simulate the same processing in a stadium, sometimes of people urging you on that you feel pressure to perform for, or people trying to go against you and wishing your demise, in addition to everything personally that's always on the line and what's out, putting it out there for your teammates and so on. So we're always trying to find the next Rosetta Stone. And I think that kind of thinking leads teams down the wrong paths. It's not simple. It's never going to be simple. And if you rely on something simple, then you're really doing an injustice to the process. Otherwise, you talk about the slander, and I've said this many times on this show around the time of the draft, is imagine if you were interviewing for a job and somebody was just broadcasting out there in social media, Sigmund Bloom stuttered 17 times on his last 3 podcasts. Why would you ever hire him to be a professional? Or, he hasn't showered in 4 days and doesn't present himself professionally. I'm just saying,
revealing too much, Bloom.
Oh, let me keep going. This is going to get dangerous. Maybe I really will say something that will disqualify me from being on the show. No, I think it's something that we just take so lightly. I think it's a part of the dehumanizing process. I think that it takes away from the moment of triumph that the draft represents. Again, this represents for most of these, I'm going to say kids. I'm 47 years old. I'm allowed to do it. Most of their lives, a big part of so many other lives, families, communities, coaches, teachers, mentors that have all collaborated to make this great moment. Truly a dream come true for so many players. And I think that this kind of stuff taints that. And maybe it's just all marketing because I notice more and more everybody saying, I hate this part of the draft process. Will the draft just get here? And maybe it's just to make it so when the draft does get here, we get that refreshing feeling. Right.
Wash over you like a drink of a Sprite, which I can't drink anymore. But anyway, like
LaCroix. Can you drink the seltzer?
Perrier, right?
Perrier,
yeah.
With a little twist of lemon.
A little twist, the lemon twist. How far could you? Nobody knows anything, right? That's our pre-show conversation. 7. You think the Raiders?
7. Yeah. I think the Raiders or the Colts are happy. And that's where
The
Sam
Colts
Farmer
should grab him. The Colts
Yeah.
should run to the podium and grab him.
Sam Farmer had it. Anderson, Carter number 3. And that's another
Okay.
player we can get into some of the slander.
Yes, right.
Some of the idea of trying to skew a process. Again, imagine if it wasn't your business, literally not your business, but also none of your business, who someone decides to hire for a job, and you decided to try to interfere with that process, right? And tell people you shouldn't hire this guy. It's terrible stuff. And I think Stroud, the Colts, I know that Shane Steichen and what he did with Jalen Hurts. Oh, what could he do with Anthony Richardson? Richardson goes to Seattle at 5, by the way, in the Sam Farmer mock. Boy, would we love that. Pop the champagne corks, right? But Stroud, this is the easy answer. It's the layup. Don't try for that corner 3. Just take the layup, NBA reference, because that's what CJ Stroud is once he gets past number 2 or 3, and maybe even at number 2, because Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, Tyree Wilson, these guys are not Myles Garrett. We're not talking about a Bosa brother here. So yeah, Stroud, congratulations to the team that gets him.
Yeah, congratulations to whatever team gets him, and the teams that pass, you're gonna get fired.
Yeah.
I guess that's the theme of today's program. Well, Robert Saleh, who I appreciate and adore as a coach and just as a man, he has been fighting against Zach Wilson for years and years and years and years. He doesn't have to worry about that now because they finally got Aaron Rodgers. We waited to talk about this, Bloom, really, until it actually happened, because I was sick of waiting for it and even talking about it. As someone who's been talking about Aaron Rodgers for 2 years going to the Broncos, it is a Broncos show, but now let's make it a Jets show. And somewhere our dear friend Chase Stewart is pumping his fist.
Yeah, he is. Well, I mean, they should be, at least in the short term. I can't remember who it was I saw on Twitter compared it to when you buy something on a credit card. Don't worry about how you're going to pay off the credit card. Just enjoy it. Just enjoy it, Don't worry. Yeah, you have to pay it off eventually. And I guess the master stroke here is from Goody, from Brian Gutekunst, because there was no market for Aaron Rodgers. See, you can dispel this if you want. Is there any other team that would have traded for Aaron Rodgers?
No.
And Aaron Rodgers probably would have retired if there would have been no team that would have traded for him. Bob McGinn doing great work with Tyler Dunn over at Go Long. Back in February, said it's over. The relationship between the Packers and Aaron Rodgers is over. It's just a question of what's going to happen next. Is he going to retire? Is he going to get traded? So it's a masterstroke by Goody here to get that second round pick that can turn into a first round pick if Aaron Rodgers plays 65% of the snaps. And I will say this about Aaron Rodgers, and we can go back to the Will Levis talk, right? Because some people saying, hey, he declined last year. And Tom Brady set unreasonable expectations. Pat Thorman, who I love his work, he did a good job laying this out. Tom Brady has set these unreasonable expectations for what quarterbacks can do after they're 40. And Brett Favre, of course, who preceded Aaron Rodgers, he was okay after 40. He was still declining. He was okay. I mean, certainly down here in New Orleans, they're happy that he threw that pick, or else history goes very differently.
With like 4 other wide open guys.
Right. That's Brett Favre. Anyway, is Aaron Rodgers declining? Was it the broken finger? The point is, over the years, Aaron Rodgers plays through lots of injuries, right? Aaron Rodgers is one of those quarterbacks at the end of the season. Well, yeah, he played 4 weeks on a knee that most players would not have played through. So I think he's going to get to that 65%. So you got a first round pick for a player and a second round pick and a bump from 15 to 13, which may or may not end up being consequential. Maybe they take the player they would have got at 15 anyway. Maybe they don't. Maybe they can trade down. Will Levis falls or something like that. But you're going to get a first round pick and a second round pick and that bump for a player that's going to cost more than any other quarterback over the next 2 years. Any other quarterback. He's going to cost $50+ million. I get it. You spread it out. It's a signing bonus. Still, you're going to pay him that money. It's Woody Johnson's money, I guess. So not my money. Right. And somehow with the Jets negotiating against themselves, they were able to get that. And we'll see. Hey, the NFC North is wide open. Packers may still be able to compete with their defense if they have that good, strong running game and set up Jordan Love for success. The Jets, on the other hand, especially because of that first round pick, cease. And I really think that Douglas messed up, because Douglas should have said it turns into a first-round pick, not 65% of playing time, if they make the playoffs. That's simple. Hey, it's a pick in the top 20, top 8, 19, 18, whatever. So who cares? If the Jets make the playoffs, no one's going to care. If the Jets don't make the playoffs, if they go 8-9 again, or whatever their record was, and this ends up being a better pick, this is going to set back the franchise. And the other thing I think we have to ask, Cecil, does Aaron Rodgers still really want to play football?
Or does Aaron Rodgers just want everyone to talk about
Aaron
Rodgers?
About it, like we have been for a few minutes. So.
Exactly.
Congratulations. You got what you wanted.
I can't wait till he goes into business with Jake Plummer on the mushroom farms.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. It's legal in Colorado, baby. I don't know. I don't know about everywhere else. Probably not. Colorado's pretty ahead of stuff like that. But anyway, so yeah, Aaron Rodgers will be doing something in Boulder, living
Makes
in
sense.
Niwot or something. Like, he'll be here. It'll be crunchy. He won't shower for 4 days.
Yeah. Overrated.
It's a callback, right? You just need to wash the oils off. You don't actually need to use soap. Anyway, let's get into our crunchy old man conversation. But before we do that, Bloom, we have to tell everyone about the Bloom 100.
Oh, yeah. No, this is a great time of year. And speaking of callbacks, Cecil, I won't belabor this, but we talked about selling nostalgia. I certainly have nostalgia for the good old days of Old Yeller, the Football Guys message board. And I loved my huge IDP Dynasty League that I was in. We maintained it on Yahoo Sports, Yahoo documents, or Yahoo groups on text documents, our rosters and everything. And it was 20 teams. It was a deep league, and nobody out there was doing rankings that mixed IDPs and offensive players for rookie drafts. So I just took it upon myself to do it. 100's a nice round number. I believe I did the first Bloom 100 in 2005, and it's back now. Go check it out at Football Guys. Of course, if you're in IDP Dynasty League, at the very least, it's going to give you not just where I think I would take these players, but I break them up into tiers. I give specific advice depending on the format of your league. One of the things I ask, is it a good draft? Well, what's your scoring system? If it's tight end premium, yeah, it's a good draft. It's a great draft. If it's a traditional PPR league, not great, not as good as you'd hoped, and things like that. I'll update it after the draft, after we find destinations. And just know this, and Cecil, I'll toss it back to you on this. I think that we look at this wide receiver group and this running back group, and you can break out a few players, right? Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Zach Charbonnet, probably. Wide receiver, you can break out Smith and Jigba, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston for the potential. I think Calvin Tillman is a pretty safe pick, really safe. But then when you get past those players and you get into the third tier, second tier, depending on how you group them up, it's a vast plateau. It goes on for a long time. And we're going to see running backs, wide receivers, let's say between like the third and fifth round, go off the board pretty quickly. And destination's going to sort it out. Opportunity's going to sort it out. Our assessment of the coaching staffs, a running back who falls to the third round, who goes in the third round, but is in a bad organization, I might not take over a running back who falls to the fifth round, but lands in a good organization. So just know there's going to be a lot of shakeup, and that chaos is something you're going to be able to take advantage of, hopefully with the help of the Bloom 100.
Bloom 100 available at footballguys.com. Also, I want to alert everyone, we're celebrating this draft week with our draft week special discount on our Football Guys premium subscription. So check that out at footballguys.com and join us. We always hear, how do we support the show? We support the show by subscribing to footballguys.com, and we appreciate you, and we thank you for that as well. Cecil, Lammey, Sigmund, Bloom going through some NFL draft notes and some NFL notes in general. Bijan Robinson is connected to the Falcons, and I will make no bones about it. I love Terry Fontenot. Love him. Absolutely love him. Wanted the Broncos to hire him. So when you build everything and then get your quarterback, it's a pretty good way to build things. It means you're going to be ready to go when you get that young man under center. They don't have their quarterback. It's not Desmond Ridder. Everyone stop. Stop. Please. Stop. But when you assemble the imagine an offense that features Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts. Just those two, not even
Yeah.
everybody else. Like, that's a pretty damn good start. So Bijan Robinson in the conversation. I think he's one of the 5 best players in this draft. He won't go at 5, may not even go at 10. Let's talk about the young runner and where he does go.
Not a pick that will get you fired. And
Right.
maybe he's the quintessential pick that will not get you fired, right?
Right,
Because he's
right,
going to be a good football player. Now, there are other conversations about running backs getting second contracts, although now when you take a running back in the first round, it's basically a 7-year contract. And can running backs influence the game? I think that's the larger conversation looming over this, even though that may or may not be the conversation the NFL is having behind the scenes. They're thinking more about costs, and they're thinking about these players and injuries and things wearing them down earlier and earlier in their career than it used to be. But Bijan Robinson, here's some of the teams that we need to think about. Like you said, Atlanta, they're at 8. That's a nice, safe pick. Philadelphia at 10, and that's where Sam Farmer had him going. And even back in March, Dane Brugler said in his mock, Philly probably won't take him at 10, but if they trade down, they could take him. There's also, all of a sudden out of the woodwork, was it Albert Breer? I don't remember who it was that said, oh, by the way, the Eagles were poised to take Christian McCaffrey at 14 back in 2017. So don't give me this, they won't take a running back. They just won't do it, because they almost did. So all this talk about them, I think Tampa Bay is the floor for Bijan Robinson. Just makes sense. Todd Bowles, they had a putrid running game last year. Todd Bowles wants to rehabilitate that running game. Rashad White's not the answer. By the way, I'll do another plug here, Cecil. I just put out today my 6 moves to make in your dynasty league before the draft. The clock is ticking, right? The draft's going to happen. Windows are going to close. Windows are going to open. I think one of them is sell Rashad White. If they don't take Bijan Robinson at 19, certainly Zach Charbonnet, somebody, they're going to add somebody. 3rd, 4th round. Tampa will certainly do that. So Bijan Robinson had 2 official visits. Philadelphia, again, sitting at 10, and Tampa Bay sitting at 19. You have that Atlanta pick. And then, I think there are teams like Washington. I think there are teams that may just look at Robinson as he falls and say, again, this is a pick that won't get me fired. This is a player that will play like a first-round pick. We could do multiple shows, on whether having a first-round quality running back actually tilts the scales in your favor in a game, because I think most of the value of a running game is created by the team, by the offensive line, by the execution, by the play sequencing, right? And any competent running back. This is why we always talk about 4th-string running backs that were street free agents in our dynasty leagues and our fantasy leagues in December. Because if you're a competent running back, you can harvest that value. So Bijan Robinson, a good player, maybe not a good pick, but a pick that won't get you fired.
Now, in a well-written movie, Bloom, every scene starts one way and it ends the opposite way. In every scene. That's the rule. Save the Cat's right behind me. It's like the greatest book of all time. So we transitioned, as you mentioned, from picks that'll get you fired to picks that won't get you fired. My final one, as we're tying a bit of a bow on today's program, is Anthony Richardson. Picks that won't get you fired. Bijan Robinson, Anthony Richardson. You want picks as a general manager. I know it's all about the, whatever building. No. GMs, the egos on GMs are much larger than the players, much larger than the coaches. General manager, you want a pick that makes you look smart, that makes every team, even if your team falls apart, some other team's like, remember when he picked blah, 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 blah. Anthony Richardson is that guy. Now, I, being the grumpy old man, got sick of when people finally woke up about Anthony Richardson, because you just haven't been paying attention. If you were like in March being like, hey, Anthony Richardson, everybody, it's like Fox Sports 5, baby, catch up. But you want a pick that won't get you fired. That is Anthony Richardson. And of course, John Schneider. Of course, John Schneider is going to be considering him.
Yeah, and where it gets interesting with Richardson is he could be the quarterback sitting there in the green room for a while, right? But then that gets teams involved, like Minnesota. maybe New England. I don't know. I don't ever want to say with 100% certainty I know what Bill Belichick will or will not do. Point being, Anthony Richardson is the kind of player, again, if he does land with a team like Minnesota, a team like Seattle, where it's built in that he has that year in the incubator, then that may be one of the more important things, because it changes expectations, because he's not put out there before he's ready. Because I think one of the themes, there's a couple of themes if you're reading about Anthony Richardson. And of course you got your RSP and you read Matt Waldman stuff, and he works with Will Levis, who works with Richardson, and Josh Norris, who I think is one of the best draft analysts out there. Absolutely. I still quote him and have learned a lot. I've changed how I think about things. He introduced where he wins, right? That's how teams should be thinking about players. Where does he win? Don't tell me what he can't do. Tell me what he can do. And the theme is, and Matt Waldman, I think, was the first one to put out there, he's not raw. He's inexperienced. There's a difference. And Matt explained it on the couch with an excellent analogy, because Matt is a master of analogies. But the idea is, and I think this was just came up in an article I'd read in the last 2 days too, that you can watch Anthony Richardson learn from his mistakes. You can watch him learn from the adversity he faces, even within a game. And isn't that really that special sauce for quarterbacks? Because even if you're Peyton Manning, you would go look up Peyton Manning's rookie year numbers. Go look him up if you haven't.
Still holds the interception record for rookies. It was like 26.
Yeah. Does that mean he's a bust? No, because he can learn from his mistakes. It's an on-the-job learning position. And then if you have that, we know Anthony Richardson can learn from his mistakes, can learn from the adversity he faces, the struggle maybe that defeats him, that puts him in the chokehold, and he has to tap out and say, for this game, yeah, San Francisco defense, you got me. Does he learn from that? Does he grow? If you add that to the best physical specimen we have ever seen in the draft at quarterback. Am I overstating it, Cecil?
No.
It's the best physical specimen we have ever seen in the NFL, and he can learn and he can process. I don't know what his S2 score was, but I know Will Levis is backing him. And Matt Waldman. Remember who was the last quarterback? Help me remember, Cecil. Who was the last quarterback Matt Waldman pounded on the table for?
Pat Mahomes.
Oh, yeah. And before that,
Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson. So when Matt Waldman pounds on the table for somebody, you should pay attention. I put Anthony Richardson at number 6 in the Bloom 100 because I assume it's one quarterback leagues. He's number 2, argument for number 1. I think for fantasy, there's no ceiling. For the NFL, there's no ceiling. And this is definitely one that the NFL's doing you a favor. Again, let's see, you talk about this. No quarterback from Texas Tech has ever done anything. Or look at Patrick Mahomes' win-loss record. Or he's too loosey-goosey out there. He's not playing within structure. He's too unstructured. Let all those arguments against Anthony Richardson pile up and count your money, count your credibility whenever Anthony Richardson shows everybody who he really is.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch on Thursday night. Programming note.
Yeah.
As we release our shows at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, right here on our YouTube channel. So make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. For special events, we will be doing live shows. And what is more special than an NFL draft extravaganza hosted by Sigmund Bloom, featuring Matt Waldman, Jason Wood, and a cast of thousands? Bloom, Thursday night's going to be fun, buddy.
It is fun. And I think the most fun thing is we react in real time. We are in real time processing what's happening. And it takes days, weeks, months, years to fully process it. And of course, to see what it all actually meant in hindsight. But we have all of this buildup. And I think, Cease, the draft, the genesis of the show was you and I talking for 3 hours about the draft. I'm going to have Thor Nystrom on tomorrow, who is the only other person I ever know that did UDFA class grades. I think the draft is where the true football nerds meet and just warm ourselves around our love of this game and everything that goes into it. And it always keeps us guessing. It always keeps us speculating. It always makes us eager to see what's going to come next. To see, isn't this what fantasy football is about? Or were we right or were we wrong? Why? Why did it happen the way it did? What can we learn from it? And the draft is that night where we all get to hang out. I, for one, feel it's a great honor. It's a great privilege that even Matt Waldman and Jason Wood want to hang out with me on draft night. And certainly that our great football guys community does. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be fan-flipping-tastic. So again, join us on our YouTube journey. Help us grow the channel. Share these videos. It really helps. And if you watch the video to the end, that helps the ever-changing, mysterious YouTube algorithm. We want to make our YouTube overlords happy. He is Sigmund Bloom. He is happy. And you'll be happy if you follow him on Twitter. That is at Sigmund Bloom. I am at Cecil Lammey. The show is at The Audible. We certainly appreciate each and every one of you out there. And thank you again for watching. Until next time, be safe, be kind, know that you are appreciated. Stay tuned. And as always, stay frosty.